Club of Los Angeles. My name is Alex Shoemate, member number 1210. I'm the immediate past president, once again filling in for our current first VP, who I believe is flipping logs or lifting stones in Scotland at the moment. So I'm happy to be here in his stead. And I'm happy to welcome Maria Korcsmaros to tell us a little bit about her story and some of the adventures that she's had.
Yeah.
For those of you who can see at home, I feel a little bit underdressed. But Maria, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for coming to share your story with us.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and Andrew got in contact with me through a scuba club he knows. So when he contacted me, I was just like, wow, that's pretty cool. I want to go check this place out. Because apparently you guys do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, well, hopefully we've lived up to expectations here a little bit.
You know, I'll try and withhold those and get you all inspired.
So I guess where we should start is with the incident itself.
Right. So way back in 2016, it was Memorial Day weekend, and I happened to be training for a half Ironman that was supposed to be happening in Canada, where I live, and it was only an hour from my parents' house. So I had gone to La Jolla with my husband for a date night. And so the following day, my plan was to do a swim for training. And my goal was to do a mile in the ocean. And my team had trained that morning. So because I wasn't able to meet up with them, I figured I'll just go in the afternoon. I'll bring my son with me. His girlfriend decided to come. And I'll just do an afternoon swim and get my time in. So I was at Corona Del Mar State Beach, which is in probably an hour from here, maybe a little bit longer. That's where I swim on a regular basis. Coming from Canada, I discovered triathlons up in Canada. It's a swim, bike, run. So you have to do all activities back to back. So the swim is usually first because they want to make sure you don't drown. And then the bike and then the run. So we usually train in different events first, and then we kind of combine everything together. So it was towards the end of my training. My race was in June, and this is May 29th. It was Memorial Day weekend. So there was over 1,000 people on the beach, and it was a beautiful sunny day. I thought, this is great. I'm going to have a great swim in the ocean. Moving there from Texas, my big thing is jumping through waves. So as a Canadian, I was not a surfer. So I had an opportunity. My family camped all the time because we were a family of 4. My dad was union, steel worker. My mom stayed at home with the 4 kids. And we camped all the time for the summer. So we'd go on camping trips. We went to Alaska and back, went to Florida and back. We did all these crazy trips of camping. So one of them was to Lake Superior on the way to some place in Alberta, wherever it was. And so I had got tumbled in a wave there. So I was just like, okay, this is crazy. And it's cold, cold water. Then I happened to go to Hawaii with my family when my youngest was 8. And we went to Oahu. And then, of course, my kids are like, we need to go to the surfing spot in Hawaii. Let's go to the North Shore. And the North Shore has crazy big waves. So my son was only about 8, and my older kids are probably 6 and 8 years older.
Yeah.
So they're holding onto his hands, and the wave comes in, and it literally dragged him out. He falls down. So I'm freaking out, and I'm like, okay, maybe we should go swimming, but maybe not. So we decided to go swimming. We jumped through the waves. On the way in, I get tumbled in another wave. So upside down, I'm looking for the sand. I hit the sand. I'm looking for the surface. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to drown here. I finally got out and got on the plane the next day, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm never going to do that again. So then, of course, we moved to California from Texas. So I had been doing triathlon since 98. 97 was when I started. So this is about 2008. So I'm thinking, well, I got to go practice in waves.
Yeah.
So let's go to a calmer beach where it's not crazy wave entry, and they're 2 feet, maybe 4 feet tops.
By the way, I hate to interrupt, maybe it's a little bit foreboding, but I think we got our shark here. He's still playing the Jaws thing.
This is my little friend, and he's really hungry. Sharks are hungry all the time. So this is our guy, and he's really hungry all the time. So, if you have a chance, you can feed him something. He'd really appreciate it. We do have a fundraiser in the back if you're interested, T-shirts and books and fun stuff like that. And this Sharks for Kids. So it's for big kids and little kids alike. And there's cool little science experiments in here too. So if you're a teacher, it's great for your kids.
Fantastic. Well, we definitely got some big kids in the club here.
Yeah, we have a lot of big kids in this audience.
Yeah.
So along the way, I thought, you know what? Let's go practice at Corona Del Mar. So I was practicing there for about 2 or 3 years before I decided to train for this race. So in I go, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Did I lose my mic? No, it's still
No, I can still hear you.
Okay. So in I go, and it's not really a huge wave entry. My son's there with his girlfriend. I say, oh, Sam, you know, he's playing in the waves with his girlfriend. I say, I'll see you in about 30 minutes. I'm going to go do my swim. So I start, it's about 200 yards from shore. There's a buoy line there. So if you've ever gone out from Newport to the Catalina, on the Catalina ferry, it's just out on the jetty on the left-hand side. So there's a buoy line there of about 5 buoys. So my goal was to swim the whole buoy line down and back for about 30 minutes, get a mile swim in, get some training in, enjoy the beach. And so I start out, we usually start at buoy number 1. Buoy number 5 was kind of way out in the ocean because it was pretty wavy. So I'm like, you know what, I'm not going to go to buoy number 5. There's a lot of kelp there. Not big into seaweed either. Because as a kid, I fell into seaweed backwards and it kind of like enveloped around me. And if you could imagine, it's dark and you're just like, I need to get out. So I decided, you know what, I'm just going to go to buoy number 3, turn around and come back, and I'll just get it done. So I head out, circle around buoy number 3, heading back at buoy number 2 on the way back in. All of a sudden, I feel this piercing pain in my whole body. It's like if you've ever got your ear pierced. It's just like that, but way more intense, like 1,000 times more. And if you see on the little monitor there, that's kind of my swim route out. So I have a Garmin that maps my swim and all my triathlons, like, kind of courses. So the buoy line is where you see all that red stuff.
Is that where the incident took place?
Yeah, so that's where the incident took place. So we go out at the first lifeguard shack. Where that little point is where the like jetty is. So we go out parallel to the jetty, and then we find the buoy line, and we kind of swim along there. So that big red area is actually where it all happened. So at buoy number 2, I feel this intense pain, and the first thought that goes through my head is, oh my God, my coach was right. There's sharks in the water. So when I first started training with this triathlon group, it's a women's group. I met them in San Dimas, of all places, in Benelli Park. She would say to us, she'd take us to the ocean swim first time out. And she goes, okay, I need to talk to you about the dirty word. We're like, what do you mean, pee in your wetsuit? And she's like, no, that happens all the time. Just don't make a grin on your face because we know you're doing it. She said, no, I got to talk about the word shark. And we're like, yeah, right. Yeah, there's no sharks in the water. And she goes, no, seriously, you're in the ocean. There's going to be sharks in the water. But the chances of you seeing a shark are 1,000,000 to 1. So, of course, you just say, okay, fine, whatever, right? It's just like anything. You just think, you know, I'm never going to get hit by a car. I'm never going to get that done to me, right? So, of course, I'm swimming along. I feel this piercing pain. I'm like, okay, well, Martha was right. There's sharks in the water.
So it was immediate recognition of what had happened?
Immediate recognition. Because I thought to myself, as a camper and as a naturalist person from a young age, and we had a cottage at like 5 years old. So I thought, you know what, there's nothing in the ocean that big that would create that much pain. So I thought, you know what, this is a shark. I got to get myself out. And I probably said a few choice words along the way. And luckily, with my naturalist and being a camper, my father had said, inground into our heads, if you're going hiking, if you're going anywhere, you need to know where you are, right? You need to have these points of reference. So whenever we would swim in there, the lifeguard shack would be our point of reference to swim to shore. The buoy line would be our point of reference when we're doing the laps, right? The jetty would be our sighting spot when we were coming back. So we had all these points of recognition. So when I was starting my swim, I saw a lifeguard boat there. So I thought to myself, you know what, you got to get that boat's attention as soon as possible and get yourself out of this water, because the chances of the shark coming back are pretty high. So my number one...
So when the incident happened, you didn't ever see the shark Was it just that quick? You felt the pain?
Yeah.
And then it was gone?
It was
You didn't
pretty-
ever see or interact personally with the shark
Not
during
at all.
the attack?
So a lot of incidents, well, not a lot. Some of the incidents you see the shark, some of them you don't. So I remember when I started my swim, I always check my watch when I start it to make sure the timer is on. I noticed that when I reached underwater to look at my watch, I could barely see my face at the watch. So the water was murky, it was kind of cloudy. We couldn't see the anchor for the buoys. And a lot of times when we swim there, you can see down to the bottom. And when the tide is in, it's about 30 feet down there. When the tide is out, it's probably about 20. And we know at the other buoy with the kelp there and stuff, there are leopard sharks who live there. And there's much smaller sharks, so they're not really a concern. But I didn't know a lot about sharks at this point. So when it happened, I didn't see it coming or going. It was just this piercing pain, and then all of a sudden, like a recognition that it was definitely a shark and I needed to get out.
And where were you bit?
So I tell people, if you stand up, let's check it out.
Both you stand up?
I lost my microphone. Okay.
We can hear you.
I have a big voice. That's what kind of got the boat to me, was this big, huge voice. So, oops. I'm going to bring this with me. All right, so I tell people I was bit like a hamburger. So if you think of yourself, if you bite a hamburger, you're biting a hamburger like this, right?
Yeah.
And it was chomp, chomp, 5 seconds, 2 bites. And because the bite mark went from here to here, my whole torso, it went from my chest down to my pelvis. So it was a pretty big shark. And if you really want to see some gory pictures, they're on the back table, because I saved those for last.
And was there any kind of, not to get morbid or gruesome with it, but you said it was 2 quick bites. Was there any of the kind of characteristic thrashing that most people associate with shark attacks?
Yeah, you do hear that a lot, and that does happen, but I didn't really find that with mine. I didn't really feel that, probably because it was so quick. And my surgeons told me because it bites into the hardest bones of your body, like hit my ribs and my pelvis, which are the hardest bones of your body, it basically kind of took a second thought and said, hold on a second, this isn't a seal, it's not my normal source of food, so I should probably let go and just get out. So that was fortunate to me, but I think because I learned later, like, sharks have more than 3 rows of teeth, especially a big great white shark, and there's multiple rows and they're all sharp, because when they lose a tooth, they want to grow one in right away because they have to eat a lot of calories just to survive. They travel over 5,000 miles in a month or less. So they do grab, they rip, and they tear. So because my arm was in front, it ripped my tricep right off. So it's basically hanging, and it was down to the bone. But fortunate for me, 2 years later, I found out, because I started volunteering at the hospital where I got taken, it missed my heart by centimeters.
Wow.
So my arm was in front. So that was very fortunate for me. And because it ripped my tricep off, it missed a lot of major nerves. So one of the things my surgeon asked me when I got out of ICU and I got upstairs was to wiggle my fingers. And when I wiggled my fingers, and he's like, oh, that's kind of cool. I'm like, what's cool about it? And he goes, well, I thought it would, sever a nerve and you wouldn't be able to move your hand. So again, I was very fortunate in that instance, because a lot of shark attack victims either lose a limb.
Yeah.
A lot of them lose a limb, or they have a severe damage where they have to have multiple surgeries to just put a body part back on.
Yeah.
And then they have to use other body parts to kind of fill in the space. So I do have muscle missing. My therapist likes to say, you no longer have a tricep, you have a unicep, because I'm missing muscle in my arm. And I do have a hole in my back from where the bite mark was in my back, because of the compression bite, because of the intensity of it. It broke 3 ribs It fractured my pelvis, punctured my lung. So when I got on board the boat, like I got a chance to talk to the lifeguards soon after because I had an interview with Good Morning America. And my lifeguards came, they brought me my goggles, and I was like, oh my God, my goggles, thank you so much. Because I was just like, I was missing my goggles, I needed my goggles back. It's funny how things, like just little things like that, like make a difference to you.
Don't put the mic in your...
Okay, so like move it away.
Don't touch it.
Just touch it. Okay.
Don't touch it.
I'm leaving it. Okay. So so when I was talking about it, they said, you know, it was really strange what happened because you were calling for help, you were waving your arms in the air, you didn't even know how bad your injuries were. Because I think my adrenaline just kicked in, and then by then you don't feel anything.
Sure.
Because it's just fight or flight. And so they basically said, you know what, when we looked at you, we thought you had a cramp or a leg cramp or something like that. But when we got closer, what we noticed was there was this big circle around you, and there was little bubbles coming up, and it was dead flat, and then I was in the center. And then as they get closer, they just saw red all around me. And then it was like, okay, this is something really bad, and we need to get this person out right away.
So how, and forgive me if you already mentioned this, how far out were you happened, and how far did you have to swim to get the attention of the lifeguard boat?
Right, so I was about 200 yards from shore. I didn't really swim at all. I just basically stopped, I treaded water, and I just waved my arms in the air. Because my number one thing was, let's get those lifeguards' attention. And my dad tells me I should have been a military sergeant because my voice is pretty loud. And I teach fitness for a living, so I'm good at projecting my voice. So I remember the mantra in my head was, get me out, get me out, get me out. And I just repeated that over and over again until I felt two arms underneath me and people pulling me out of the water. So they revved up their engine, they did an about turn, and they just came towards me. And then they just each, one each, they just pulled me up. And then before I knew it, I was on the deck of the boat.
Were you conscious this whole time?
Yeah.
For the remainder of the experience, or was there any point where you...
No, I was, I'm a pretty stubborn person. And because I do triathlons and because I'm a little bit competitive, I was just like, you know what, I need to stay conscious. I need to make sure I get help. Because when I got on the boat, it was just like, okay, you need to make sure my son knows where I am and my husband knows where I am. And that's kind of one of the first things I said. And one of the first things an EMS person asks you is like, what's your name? How old are you? Where are you? Right? Because they want to make sure that you know what's happening. So my main concern when I got on the boat was like, I felt this pressure on my chest. And I was like, I can't breathe, you need to check my chest. And the lifeguard said to me, he said, your chest is not my main concern, it's your arm. I need to put a tourniquet on your arm, and you need to hold this until I tell you to let go. And when he said that to me, I felt this warm, gushing stuff out of my arm. And he put the tourniquet on, I held it. And then as my arm went numb, then he was like, okay, can I turn you over? Can I check your other injuries? And meanwhile, this boat is zooming around the jetty and coming into the Balboa Coast Guard. So on that picture of the Garmin, you can see the boat route around the jetty and back to the Coast Guard. So I actually have my Garmin on right, and I have another picture. It shows you my trip in the EMS truck. And then I'm kind of, all us triathletes, if you've ever done a run or whatever it is, you're very concerned about your time. So in the ambulance, I said, can I just get my Garmin turned off because I want a good time for my swim? And they kind of looked at me and said, well, you know what, I'm kind of busy right now. Can I do that in a moment or two? And I said, yeah, sure, just get it whenever you can. So, in the ambulance, I was still conscious, and I know they were, having to attach an IV to me and things because I think I was probably crashing pretty bad because I had lost a lot of blood.
Yeah.
When I talked to the doctors after, they said I lost like 2 pints of blood.
Wow.
So by then you're probably pretty low. And in the ambulance, I remember them asking me, can we cut your wetsuit off? Can we cut your bathing suit off? And I'm just like, yes, yes. And so that's my wetsuit if you see in the picture. And Chris Lowe is the main guy at Cal State Long Beach. He's a marine biologist. So he has a 20-year study of the California sharks, particularly great whites, and he's been mapping them and tagging them for over 20 years. So he has a big grant right now through the government to study white sharks, because now they're finding with the warming waters and just climate change in general that the big mamas are coming down here to pup, and the juveniles are staying for up to 10 years, sometimes longer. And because there's a lot of food along the coastline. We've done a great job over the last 20 years of protecting not only great white sharks, but seals and fish populations, marine protected areas. On our back table, we have some pamphlets on marine protected areas in California. And we have marine protected areas all the way from Santa Barbara to Northern California, all the way down the coastline, for divers to explore. And I'm sure if there's a few divers in the group here, you've probably gone to a few of them. Laguna has one. Corona del Mar, Crystal Cove, Santa Barbara has some, Monterey, Channel Islands, there's all kinds of marine protected areas there. So they know that reefs are healthier and stronger with a shark on the reef.
So I know you've obviously gotten very involved in a lot of this environmental work now. What was the journey, though? Because I have to imagine that, obviously physically, there must have been a lot of rehabilitation that had to happen.
Oh, absolutely.
But then also emotionally going through an experience like this, because it didn't sound like you had a particularly strong connection to ocean health, sharks, the kind of environmental side of this thing prior to the incident.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Even though I grew up, for those of you who are older enough, with Mutual of Omaha. I started watching Mutual of Omaha when I was a kid. And my dad has always been a nature guy. He came from England. He hiked the moors of England, was a youth hostler and all that stuff. So he got us involved in nature pretty young. We had a cottage when we were little, and we would go, camping all the time. We'd go to the Beaver Dam and hang out and go fishing. So Mutual of Omaha was pretty cool. And then when National Geographic came along, and the huge things that they do in National Geographic and Discovery Channel, it was just awe-inspiring. So I instilled that in my kids, and we would watch it all the time. So when I was going through my recovery, one of the things, being strong and in good shape at the time, my doctor said that really helped me recover quicker. So I was actually out of the hospital in about 9 days.
Wow.
Even given my injuries. When they put me back together, I had 161 staples and 7 stitches. It
might be tough to see with the sharks.
Yeah, I'm gonna, what? This is getting really hot, so I'm going to take Harriet off. So let me just dismember for a moment. And that pun intended.
Yeah. Well, I know you've got a pretty fascinating memento from the experience.
Forget the hair, because
You look great.
that's kind of scary. Oh, that is so much better. And then with the breeze of the fan, it's kind of nice. All right, we'll get the shark hat on, because then the hair is way better in control. There we go. Okay. And I got the shark shorts on. These were pants at one point. So I have a lot of triathlete friends. And one of my girls, Jenny and I forgot her name. Anyway, they're big ocean swimmers. They love to swim all the time, and they love sharks. So they got me these as pants, but I get rather warm quickly, so I made them into shorts. So these are my shark shorts, and then this is my Shark Stewards shirt. So I like the great white because that's what bit me. And
so you've got the necklace with all the...
So I'm going to move it over. So this is my necklace, and it has all my staples on it with a shark tooth from the aquarium of the Pacifica. So I was fortunate enough that after my incident, I was able to go to the aquarium with a company called Pop Sugar, and they did an episode of me at the aquarium, and we got to go to the back scene and look at all the aquariums from the back end and see how they do the shark tank. And I got to feed the leopard sharks and get in there and feed them some little shrimp. And leopard sharks are pretty cool because they just suck in the shrimp and they just inhale it. So it's kind of neat. And that kind of got me interested in sharks. So that was about probably 4 months or so after my incident. And because I had to cancel a couple of races, I was a month out from my goal race in Canada. So I called up the race instructor, or the race director, and I emailed him and I said, I'm going to have to kind of drop out of this race because I got bit by a shark. Do you think you can refund me my money? And he kind of said, well, you got bit by a shark? And I said, yeah. I said, it's in the news. If you want to go research it, maybe you could give me my money back. And he kind of just took my word for it. And so I just made him a promise that I would do it the following year.
Well, and so I mean, it's an interesting thing to think about because shark attacks are such like a emotionally charged incident that people think about. I think all of us have generically heard that shark attacks are much less common than we think. There's always comparisons to how much more likely we are to be struck by lightning or whatever it is. But because of movies and whatnot, there's something really viscerally fascinating, terrifying about shark attacks. So what was the experience, going through this? That all of a sudden now there's media reporting on this incident. I'm sure that it sounds like there were some researchers that were interested in talking to you in terms of trying to study behaviors and patterns that maybe there's support groups for shark attack survivors.
So it was interesting because the media is just all over this, right? It's kind of like a rabid dog attack or a dog attack or any kind of violent crime. They treat it as something that's very intrusive, obviously, into you because you are the victim. And it is called an attack all the time. But in essence, a shark is just kind of looking for prey and it's looking for something to eat, right? Yeah. So, and they don't have hands or they can't pick up their food, they're going to use their mouth. So, I mean, for me, it was like, okay, yeah, I got attacked, yeah, it was an incident, but it's not really the shark's fault. I was in its environment, I was swimming in the ocean. It's just like if you go camping, my dad said, there's bears in the woods, you need to be careful of bears. And you don't want to get in between a mama bear and her baby because that's a bad scenario. And you got to kind of respect nature, right? And we're taught that on land, but I think in the ocean we're not really, unless you're a diver, unless you know of those things, you're not really aware of those things. So when they happen, it's very hard to accept. And for me, I accepted it because I knew I was in their environment and everything, but then you always have that thought process in your head about maybe something I could have done different. And because my coach had talked about it, had said about it, but there's nothing really to prepare you for something like that. So getting back in the water was probably the hardest thing because you're thinking to yourself, and I went to a couple therapists and I said to myself, because I was concerned about my emotional state, because I was thinking a lot about, okay, what do I do now? Because I wanted to get back in, but then I was just like, well, I don't want to get back in. So I went to a gentleman and he, to try and get diagnosed for PTSD, because then you kind of always want that diagnosis, because in our culture, it's like, okay, let's get diagnosed. So I went, and this guy said to me, I'm going to put you on a train, and you're gonna drive away from this incident in the ocean, and how do you feel? I said, I feel scared. He goes, why do you feel so scared? I said, because I left that girl alone in the water. And he didn't understand my thought process. But I think in my head, I was thinking more of, if that lifeguard boat wasn't there, if someone wasn't there to help me, I would have been stranded in the water. And that shark could have come back. It could have bit me again. I could have bled out. I could have been dead within 2 minutes or longer. I could have been drowned. There's a number of things that go through your head, and you think, what could have happened, right? The woulda, coulda, shoulda. So for me, just getting over that was really, really hard, because I did want to get back in. I did want to get back to training, and I did want to enjoy being back in that environment. So because that didn't really work for me, I decided to go to someone else. And so I consulted this woman that my coach had brought out for wave entry. And because wave entry was hard for me, this woman had come in, she was a psychologist, and she was kind of like telling us, okay, this is how you're going to do it. And when you grow up in California, if you're a surfer or if you play in the waves, as a young child, you learn instinctively what to do, right? You dive under the wave, you touch the sand, you push through that force of the wave, you pop up on the other end, and it's perfectly fine, and you're able to go out, right? Well, I'd never learned how to do that, right? So this woman was brought in to kind of go through the mental aspect of entering those waves, getting over that thought process and moving forward. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to go talk to her and see what she has in mind. So she had mentioned that I should probably talk to her, the woman who trained her. So I went to her, and she said, you know, let's picture this scenario. You have two little girls on your shoulder. You have the logical girl and the emotional girl, the left-right side brain, right? She said this logical girl is where you usually perform from, where you usually see your racing or your triathlons, because you are competitive, you do go out and you get things done. She said this girl for a number of years has said, just go do it, tackle the competition, get it done. You've done this before, you can do it again, let's just do it. And that's what I was used to doing. Well, now this emotional girl on my shoulder is saying, you know what, you can't get back in the water, you're gonna get bit by a shark again. You can't get back in the water, you could get tumbled in a wave. You know, there's dangerous things out there, don't do it. And what I thought to myself, I thought, you know, when we fall off a bike as a kid, the first thing our parents say to us is get back on the bike, right? And it's scary at first, but when you're 5, you're just like, okay, well, mom says it's okay, dad says it's okay, I'm gonna just go do it, right? And you get over that fear pretty quickly and you get it done. But as an adult, I think that fear kind of sits with you longer, so it's harder to get over. So I thought about that and I said, you know, you're probably right. Can we work with that? And she said, yes, you can. So what we did, I had a goal race to get back to 5 months later, and it was in Mission Bay, San Diego. So Mission Bay, if anyone's been there, it's a bay area with Fiesta Island there. It's enclosed. It's only have one boat entry and exit. So it's a pretty safe area. And if a shark were to get in there, it'd probably be a smaller shark. And it's probably just like baby sharks in general, or if any. So my goal was to do that race in October, and she said, okay, how are we going to get you ready for that race? How do you see that race? And I'd done that race for 5 years straight. So I said, well, there's going to be lifeguards there in the water. She said, okay, do you feel safe? I said, yes, I do. I said, and my son's going to buddy swim because they're allowing a buddy swimmer, and I found a guy that's willing to buddy swim me as well. So I'm going to have 2 people on either side of me. And she said, okay, do you feel safe? I said, yes, I do. So I said, and then there's going to be people on paddle boards, there's going to be boats in the water because they're there just in case something happens and they got to pull someone out. So she said, well, do you feel safe? I said, yes, I do. Then she said, okay, how many people are in this competition? I said, well, I'm going to move this off. There's over 500 people there. So she said, well, do you feel safe? I said, yeah. She said, okay, well, let's go do the race. So I did get to that race, and I was able to do it, and I had an awesome time.
Were any of your injuries physically limiting in terms of getting back in and doing different types of strokes?
So it took about, I was in the hospital for 9 days. I got out, and it took me a month at my house. My parents had flown in from Canada after everybody got notified in Canada. They flew in about 2 days later. So my mom became my nurse. My dad was my guy that slept on the couch to make sure I could get to the restroom and back. My husband had set up a hospital bed downstairs, so I was close to everything. My neighbor set up a food chain. So my goal was just to walk every day and get myself moving. So I started walking in the month of June. In July, I got clearance from my doctor to fly to Canada on my annual vacation. So in July, I started doing a little bit of swimming. I was already walking in June. And then in July, when I went to Canada, I got on a spin bike. I was able to bike on a mountain bike and stay upright without my ribs being too annoying. With the 3 broken ribs, those took 3 or 4 months to even feel better. So that was the longest part of my recovery, was the ribs. And even now I have like a kind of a dull thud at the front. In the back, they tell me I have 2 non-unions, but my muscle mass kind of keeps things stable. So the swimming was the hardest part because this arm, because of the detached tricep, I had to keep it in a brace for a month to have the ligaments heal. So after I got the brace taken off, I was able to work on the bend. So at first, they said, okay, you have a month to get it to 90 degrees. And once you get it to 90, you can start bending it all the way. So because I have an amazing physical therapist in Orange County, in Orange, I went to him before I left and I said, what can I do to get started? So he gave me a few exercises to work on while I was in Canada. So by the time I got back, I was probably about here. So the month of August, I went twice a week to physical therapy to get my arm so I could touch my shoulder. And that was pretty intense because there was a point where he was like, okay, you got to push, and then he'd push, and then I'd push, and I'd be like, okay, you're going to break my arm. And he's like, no, this is okay, you're fine. And I'd be like, are you sure? And we did get it there. But we had to do cupping, we had to do all kinds of weird, wonderful things.
Did you do any of the electro stimulation stuff?
Yeah, we did the stem. But cupping, oh my goodness, that was so bad. I was like, this is worse than a shark attack, okay? Because
It kind of looks like a shark attack when you get done with it.
It was crazy. Because the shark left in 5 seconds, but the cupping is like, they suck it on there, and then you go, and then they go, and they do it more than one time. So it's like 10 little things, and I had like, it's kind of like when you see Michael Phelps in the Olympics, and he had all those like round circles on his back.
All the leopard spots.
Yeah, I had those all over my arm. And they were little tiny ones. And I think they're worse than the big ones. But it pulled the scar tissue away from the muscle, so now I have full, like it's flat and it's like malleable. It's not really tight. So they did a really good job on it. And with consistent work, I was able to get back my arm. So in Canada, the only thing I could do was a breaststroke. I could barely move my arm over my head.
Yeah.
And it was way out here. It wasn't coming here. So it was a lot of intense work, but it was worth it, you know, when you can get back to doing what you like to do and what you have done for 20 years. So.
And I'm curious, did you seek out any other, you mentioned that when you were training for Ironman races, that this is like a concern that gets brought up. Are there other well-known Ironman athletes that have had shark attacks? Did you ever seek out, or did any of them reach out to you, people who have been through a similar experience and continued to race and compete?
Not triathletes, but it was funny because it's interesting who you find in your journey. So when I went to Canada on vacation that July, I decided to go to the race site where I was going to race, to just introduce myself to race director. And because I have, one of the things I do with my fitness is I enter races because it gives me a goal. And when you pay for something, you're more likely to train for it. So I usually do my race season in December for the following year, and I pick like 6 races or whatever, and that's what I do for the year. So because I had this race on my calendar, I was just like, okay, I'm going to go this guy, and I'm going to give myself a goal, and I'm going to say, listen, if I can get to your race next year, that's my goal. He's like, okay, if you can get to my race next year, you don't have to pay because you're already paid. I'm like, okay, sounds good. So I went to that race, and while I'm cheering on the other participants, because I wanted to stay and kind of experience the venue, I'm cheering this, the swimmers as they come off to swim and they go into this bike transition to get on their bikes, and I'm cheering, and while I'm cheering, this woman's like, oh, because I'm walking funny and I'm still healing, and she's like, oh, what happened to you? And I said, well, I got bit by a shark. She's like, oh my God, there's another woman here who got bit by a shark. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, this is literally 2 months later. I said, you have to be kidding me, there's no way. She goes, no, seriously, she's right behind you. Like, oh my God, I have to go meet this woman. So I go over and I meet this woman, and she was in Cancun on vacation with some girlfriends, and she got bit by 2 bull sharks.
Oh, geez.
In Cancun. And she was literally in 6 feet of water. And we're sharing gory pictures of our incident. And she was like, yeah, you know, this is what happened. And I'm like, oh my God, that's just crazy. And then like on the screen, you see me here with 3 other people. Those are all shark attack survivors that I met after my incident. So, and they all got together with me. Like, I was like, okay, I need to get back in the water. I need some support. So in 2019, I decided, you know what, now's the time. I got to get back at Corona Del Mar, and I got to swim where it happened and get back on the bike. So I invited all these guys out. I said, listen, can you come and just swim with me or just be there? They're like, sure, no problem. And they all came down. And Stephen Robles is a gentleman on the far left, or yeah, if you're looking at it now. So, and then you have a young man in the middle, that's Keem Weber Hayes, and then the lady on the outside, that's Leanne Erickson. So Stephen Robles was 2014 on July 4th. He was in Manhattan Beach. He's a marathon swimmer. And a great white was on a fishing line, and it got on the fishing line. It dove down into the bottom and did a circle and breached beside him and got his hand and his arm. Keem Weber Hayes was September 29th, 2018. So I was May 29th, 2016. Leanne was April 29th, 2017. And Keem Weber Hayes was September 29th, 2018. So that was the year of all the sharks along Southern California that got on the news. And they were seeing some in Long Beach that were like 50 feet from shore. So Leanne was in San Onofre, and she was body surfing with her boyfriend. And a great white had come up behind her, grabbed her fin, let go, and grabbed her hamstring and ripped it right off. Jeez. From her hip bone to her back of her knee. So she was in an induced coma because it actually took her underwater, and she inhaled seawater and sand. So they had to get that out of her lungs before they could even look at anything else. So then she had to have reconstructive surgery on her whole hamstring. Wow. And then Keem Weber Hayes with diving and spearfishing. And he had got a fish on the end of his spear. He was there with a young friend on a reef in Encinitas. And the shark was right beside him and went for the fish and grabbed his shoulder and hit him in the face, knocked his face mask off, and ripped into his whole shoulder. And luckily for all of them, Stephen had some friends bring him to shore and helped him with some first aid. Leanne had her boyfriend that popped her on a surfboard and brought her in. She was airlifted. And then Keem Weber Hayes had a kayaker there that got him on his kayak and brought him to shore. So in all these instances, you know, we survived because someone's there to help us.
Yeah.
So, you know, the number one thing I've learned is don't ever do anything alone. Because if you're in nature and something happens, you need help. And so, you know, so when I was in Canada getting back to meeting this woman, her name was Nicole, she said, you know, there's this survivor Facebook page that you might be interested in. I said, you know, I really would be interested in something like that. Because I was kind of having, that was before I kind of decided to see the therapist. It was really early, because it's only 2 months after. I said, you know, if you could give me that page, I'd really, really appreciate it. And the guy's name is Dave Pearson. So he had a shark attack in Australia. He was a surfer. And he was at the hospital, and he met another shark attack survivor from Australia, obviously. And that's like a hot spot. They have way more than we do. And so he found that in the hospital, talking to this young girl, they kind of had this camaraderie that you don't get with other people because you're kind of surviving the same thing, right? Yeah. So he thought to himself, you know, this really helped him kind of accept what he went through, and by having that connection, it really gave him a lot of support. So he thought, you know, maybe this is a good thing for me, and I could maybe reach out to other people that have gone through a similar situation, and let's try and, you know, get this thing going. So he's been doing this for quite some time. We have, it's a private group. You have to have an incident to get on there, or you have to be a family member of an incident to get on there. And initially it was just for shark attack survivors, but now we're including people that have had hippo attacks. One lady's been attacked by a lion. A bear. There was someone in Tahoe that got attacked by a bear in her own cottage.
Wow.
So she's on there as well. So, you know, he's reaching out to other people. So now he's got a page, it's called beyondthebite.org. And if you are a survivor, you get a free t-shirt. But you have to be a survivor. Right? So, so yeah, it's kind of cool because we have that forum that we can go to and we can just ask these random questions. And there's guys on there that, there's a gentleman, Damon Kendrick, and if you look up his name, he was a marathon swimmer. He turned into a professional diver with one leg. After his incident, he lost his leg from the knee down, turned into a professional diver with half a leg. He's still a marathon swimmer at 60-something. And these guys have been through it. You know, they've been there as support. They have their own story. So there's a lot of camaraderie there, and there's a lot of acceptance, and you can ask as many questions as you want or not ask.
Do you encounter with a lot of these people this same kind of impulse to get back on the bike, get back in the water?
Oh, absolutely.
Or are there people you're encountering in these groups who are just so traumatized that they've been put off, you know, the idea of getting back in the ocean, going back out into the woods, wherever their attack or incident happened?
Yeah, it can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
So like Leanne is one of those people in that picture. Like Leanne, when her incident happened, because she got taken underwater and because she was in a coma, and hers, she actually saw the shark eye to eye. She poked it in the eye, it let go, she would pop to the surface. Hers was way more traumatic, I think, than mine, because I didn't see it coming or going. So for her, she actually had to leave California and rehab somewhere else into deep nature and get away from the ocean, because just looking at the ocean brought back a lot of terrifying things for her.
Yeah.
And when I got back in the water, she wasn't able to get back in because she is dealing with more health issues than I am. She has a drop foot because she has nerve damage. And there's, you know, the people who lose limbs, I mean, that's a lot of trauma, right? So it takes, you know, it's different people, and it's like anything, it takes a village to kind of recover and to raise a family and all those things. And now we've become a family, you know, it's a bike club family. So we all have our own story. We all say to us, you know, you don't have to get back in today, tomorrow, next year, this year, 5 years from now. It's all individual to you.
Yeah.
And if you choose never to get back in, it's not something that we're going to make you feel guilty about. It's an individual choice.
Sure.
Right? And every year, I mean, I have to say to myself, because, you know, the triathlon season is only for a certain time that the water gets cold. And I don't like cold water. So in the winter, I take probably 3 months off. So getting back in the first time is kind of nerve-wracking for me. And, you know, my friends know, and they know that I like to have people with me. So when I go out there and I'm just like, okay, can you swim with me? And they're more than happy to do that. So I really appreciate those friends around me that are able to be cognizant of that and be able to help me.
Yeah.
And be there for me. Because if they weren't, I probably wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
So, you know, and, you know, my son's a great inspiration for me because he was a scuba diver at the time. And he was 16 at that time. He's now 22. And if anyone has had a 16-year-old boy or even a child in general, they have no filter at some point. And when you ask their opinion, they just tell you right out what it's like. So he basically said, probably 2 months after, when I was ready to do a little bit of stuff, he said, Mom, you're prey on top of the water and you're part of the environment underneath. You should become a scuba diver. I'm like, oh, okay. So in 2019, I became a scuba diver. So now I'm diving, and it's like a whole other world.
Yeah.
Because I was a snorkeler before. And now I get to experience stuff really up close. And it's just enthralling and it's amazing.
Yeah.
And I want to get better at it. But, you know, there is still that thought process in my head. Because if a shark came up beside me, I'd probably literally jump in the water and I might lose my regulator and then I'd be like fighting for my life again.
Yeah.
So it's something I'm taking one step at a time. But the adventure is still there.
Yeah.
And and it's something I want to get better at. And I think it's good to have a challenge. So, you know, doing what I do now and getting to know Shark Stewards, and I found out about them 6 months after my incident. The founder and director actually contacted me wanting to know more about my incident because he is a marine biologist, he's a shark person. He's just like, you know, I'm just curious, and I want to let you know that Chris Lowe and Ralph Collier had come out to kind of check out my wetsuit and just get an idea how it happened, where it happened, the time of day, and all those things. And they did determine that a great white, 8 to 10 feet, juvenile, 8 years old, they're investigating their environment. They're choosing bigger prey. They're figuring out where their food source is. And as a swimmer, the sun was shining down on me. I looked like a seal because there's just a shadow. Your limbs are out to the side, you're kicking, you look like a seal. It's kind of like a shortboard surfer. That's more a seal shape or a sea line versus a longboard.
Yeah.
So from 30 feet down, if you look up as a shark, you're going to go seal. And a dog is going to say squirrel, and it's just going to chase it, right? So I was lucky the shark was dead on in the fact that it hit me on my major bone and not a limb, and to lose a limb. So, you know, to me, I tell people, listen, I turned fear into fascination, and now I'm really fascinated about sharks and their role in nature. And as I learn more and more, it helps me figure out how to deal with that when I go back in. And as a scuba diver, what I want to look forward to or want to kind of get over that fear. But just learning about sharks and how important they are to the ecosystem and that they've been around for thousands of years. And then it's interesting how history or your life events happen, because I have kids, and my youngest, who's a diver, from a young age, it was alligators, sharks, and dinosaurs.
What his fascination?
Yeah, that was his fascination. It was anything with teeth. And it was all big, scary stuff. And, you know, and I was exposed to that all the years of his life. And then for this happen to me, it's kind of like, was this fate? Or what was it? And so now moving forward, you know, on the Bike Club page, on this Facebook page, we call it our Sharkversity. It's the year of our incident. So now I'm like 6 years a survivor. So I have 2 birthdays every year. So one is my survival of a shark attack, and the other one's my normal birthday. But it's true what they say, like when you survive a life or death experience, you kind of cherish the other things you have in your life, and you enjoy things differently, and you find enjoyment in different things, or just more enjoyment in just everyday stuff, right? So being involved with this nonprofit and being able to help them in their mission and just sharing and raising awareness for our environment, you know, is something I feel passionate about, and it's something I think that gives me purpose moving forward. And I think it's important because, you know, if David Suzuki wasn't around when I was young, I don't think we could have been as far forward as we are. And we really need to...
Who is David Suzuki?
David Suzuki, back in my day, he was the first environmentalist that kind of told us, listen, if we don't take care of our planet, something bad is going to happen. So we started paying more attention to the planet and doing, like, starting recycling, composting, and things like that.
Yeah.
I've been composting since I was 5.
Wow.
And I taught my kids how to compost, even though they don't do it very well. But, you know, recycling and all that. I mean, and even working with a nonprofit, and Shark Stewards is under an envelope of Earth Island Institute. So they're in Northern California. But they have Plastic Pollution Coalition. They have a number of nonprofits underneath them. And it's all environmental stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you look at plastics, only 10% of the plastic we recycle is actually recycled.
Yeah. Well, I know you've brought a lot of literature and stuff to share. So it sounds like you're doing work with the plastics now.
Well, plastics
What's the kind of general, like what kind of work now is Shark Stewards undertaking going forward?
Yeah,
that
so
you've been a
Shark
part of?
Stewards' main mission is protecting ocean ecosystems and sharks in their role. So we lobby against the shark fin trade. That's our number one thing. And the shark fin trade is the random killing of every single shark on the planet, babies, females, males, whatever it is. It's like cutting off your arms and legs and throwing you back in the ocean, telling you to go swim. So basically, if you see that shark on the screen, it's a hammerhead, cut off all its fins, they throw the body back in, and it basically drowns. And
it's something like 100 million sharks a year.
100 million sharks a year. And if you see this poster right here, this is in Costa Rica, and it was taken. It's a shot of a warehouse. So they're drawing the fins on the top of a warehouse, so you can't see it unless you fly over it with a helicopter or plane. So that's like, it's kind of like the drug cartel of shark fin trade. So they're hiding all those fins. Each one of these fins is probably worth $500 to $1,000 each.
Wow.
So in a poor country like Costa Rica or Indonesia or whatever, they're going to make a lot more money off a shark fin than they would going fishing every day.
Yeah.
So one of the things Shark Stewards does is they go on trips to Malaysia or Indonesia. They relocate sharks from the fishing area to another part of the island so they can survive, and then they engage the local population to help them and pay them or whatever it is, and bring awareness to the situation so the local population gets involved, and then they're more likely to continue and to maybe find another area of trade that they can make a living in and maybe help you on a reef or be a marine protected area. Like Shark Stewards works with Sylvia Earle, and she's been a scuba diver since she was like young. She's 84 now, she still scuba dives.
Wow.
She's with the Blue Hope. So they've established host spots all over the world, and so she's very much involved with some of the work that Shark Stewards does. And just protecting that and getting the locals involved in their own policy and helping them develop that policy so that they can have a marine protected area where a scuba diver might go and turn it into a tourist industry. And one shark a year could make $1 million in the tourist industry.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more money than going and killing a shark for 1 or 2 fins.
Yeah.
And then teaching people, listen, and youth in general, because we have an education program online, and we go out to schools and teach them this, and it's just basically saying, we're deeply connected to the ocean. We get 70% of our water from the ocean. There's a whole ecosystem, like in the Amazon forest, you have the top predator, the middle, the bottom of the ocean, and at every level of the ocean there is a shark. So fish populations are going to be healthier with a shark in the system. They eat the dead, the decayed, and the dying, so they're going to get rid of all those dead animals that are out there. You hear all the time a dead whale in the middle of the ocean is going to have like 5 hungry sharks in it, and they're going to gorge themselves until that whale is probably almost gone.
Yeah.
So, they've been around for 1,000 years. So if something is around for 1,000 years, number one, it's pretty strong, and there's a lot to learn from that. And it's obviously integral to the whole system. Because like anything, if you take away one part, the wolves are a great example, right? Years ago, we killed all the wolves, and the deer population went crazy, and then other things happened, right?
Yeah.
And so we have this deep connection with nature. And there's a lot of people that go out into nature, and you have that calming feeling. There's nothing like going to your cottage, or if you are, you guys are all adventurers, right? So when you go adventure around the world, it's your favorite place to be.
Yeah.
Right? And you feel at peace, and you feel like you're at one, and you're having a great moment.
Yeah, you feel connected.
And you feel connected. So I think everybody can associate with that. And the people who can't, once you tell them about it, like we have a favorite saying at Shark Stewards, put a kid's face underwater and show them the amazement of the water, and you've got them.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what we want to do. We want to educate. We want to tell people the awesomeness of the ocean and the connection that we have with it, and just get that passion going and get that, because once we have that, you could do anything.
Yeah.
Right?
And you mentioned a couple of the projects that you're personally pursuing as part of this.
A couple of the projects that we're working on in California, we have this California Shark Watch program. So we're trying to get an idea of all the species of sharks in California and get a count. So we're encouraging scuba divers, beachgoers, anybody who's on the ocean, if they see a shark, to take a picture. We have a QR code that you can upload your picture to, and we can get an idea of the population. One of the studies we're doing really, really deeply is the Sevengill sharks in San Diego. So there's a spot in San Diego where you see a lot of Sevengill sharks. So we have a dive coming up on October 15th where David is going to be on it. He's going to be doing his talk on Sevengills and the species in general. And then we're going to go on a dive and try and see some sharks and upload them to this QR code.
And where can people find this website, this QR code?
It's www.sharkstewards.org.
Okay.
So all the trips are on there. We do a manta ray trip to Socorro. Probably we're going to have one next year. I think they had to cancel it this year because they didn't have enough people. We usually do a great white trip out to the Guadalupe Islands. That's more of a dive cage, though, because those are big mamas out there. You don't really want to get in their way.
Yeah.
And we never chum the water because that's not recommended, because you just entice a shark if you chum the water. So we're very much against that. We have a big one coming up with CITES. So CITES, David will be going to Panama to represent Shark Stewards at CITES. And we're trying to get the oceanic white-tip and the hammerheads protected because they are kind of on the threatened list right now. So they did a big, huge shark hunt in Florida recently where a bunch of people went out and they just hunted sharks all day and just like basically massacred them. It was pretty horrible. But hammerheads are one of the big sharks down there. So there's so, and it's amazing after being involved with this organization for a number of years, and I established the Run for Sharks and Ocean Health Fair in Newport Beach, and it's our 5th year this year. And that's a fundraiser for our programs, but the main goal is it's to raise awareness, to get the word out. Because I think once people know, it's like you said, you just embrace it and you move forward. And I think the more people, it's like plastics, like anything. We do beach cleanups because that's the #1 way we reach people. And it's simple and easy. You can host a beach cleanup. People can come to your booth and they go, oh, you're Shark Stewards? What do you do? And then you tell them what you do and you're just like, oh, okay. That's pretty cool. And some people get involved. Some people just come to our beach cleanups, which are more than happy to have you come out there because plastics are a real problem.
Yeah.
And trash is a real problem. And if we all do our part, maybe in another 20 years, we'll still be here.
Yeah.
Right? We won't have to look to Mars as somewhere else to go. Because I kind of love Earth the way it is.
Yeah.
And all the richness it has.
Absolutely. Well, Maria, thank you so much for coming tonight and sharing your story and also sharing some ways
nice to be here.
that we can all get involved and also participate in helping to protect the oceans.
Yeah.
At this point, if we have somebody willing to work the mic, I saw Grace raise her hand. Steve, maybe you could go and grab the mic and just pass it around. We can open it up to the audience for a Q&A if anybody has any questions. There's a mic stand right in the front there. You just grab that guy, flick him on, and then pass it around. Thanks, Steve.
Testing.
Hello, friend. We
Hi.
talked earlier. So, Alan, my dog meat trade survivor, is here wearing his great white shark collar because,
Cool.
as an avid great white shark diver, I also am an advocate for keeping these magnificent creatures alive. I have my one and only megalodon tooth that I got from the Adventurers Club about 3 years ago, and that was a couple million years old, I believe. I go to Guadalupe as my favorite place. That's where I find my zen.
Wow.
And I dive with them outside of the cage at 50 feet and below. So I've swam with them on a dorsal and felt the power of the vibration with their complete calmness. And it's so different from surface to 50 feet and below, right? And hearing your story, I actually, if you could pull up your notes, I typed something up. I wanted to just say to you, it's more of a statement, not a question. But you said that you wondered if you could have done anything different, that you question, was this fate or something like that, right?
Right.
And but because you didn't, you're helping to save hundreds and thousands of sharks, the greatest and oldest predators on Earth. Because you didn't do anything different, the great white shark has come off the endangered species list. So thank you for your sacrifice.
No, thank you. That's awesome.
So anyways, that's all I
pretty
wanted
cool.
to say. Yeah, and also, if you guys ever want to come to Guadalupe, I think it would be kind of really interesting, like, to do all of that. They do chum, but I'm sure we can talk about this later. But
Yeah.
yeah.
That's something I do have in the back of my head, because it was funny because Shark Week is on this week. So I watched an episode, it was called Crikey. There's a shark in the water with Steve Irwin's son. And I watched it, and it was really cool because his goal was to get in the water with a great white. And Madison Stewart was there, who's Rod Stewart's sister. And we have his movie. And he's from Canada, and he did a movie on the shark fin trade. And then they had a shark attack survivor there that had lost an arm, a hand, and a leg. And he was a diver. But one of the things they said was, when you get in the water with a shark, is you need to calm your heart rate. And I thought, okay, that'd be really hard to do. Because one, you're excited, or two, you're scared to death. So then how do you calm your heart rate down enough that the shark's not going to kind of look at you and go, oh, look, there's dinner.
And that's my thing. Like, before I grabbed the dorsal, and she was about 19 to 22 feet, so she was a big girl. But all I could hear was AC/DC playing way up at the boat, and my heart. And I remember it just barely going to nothing.
Oh, wow.
And I would look, and it was 130-foot plus visibility. So I would look, and then there's a giant shark right there. And it would be like, hey, and their eyes that are black, when you're that deep and the sun hits them, there's colors I'd never seen before. And it was just like, I never knew what peace felt like until I realized, like, you had the whole ocean and you came to say what's up to me.
Yeah.
And like, I asked Lawrence Groth, who owns Great White Adventures, the Solmer V that we go on the boat with, like, what are my chances if I jump off the boat and it's only 100 yards to shore that I would make it? And he said slim to none. But at 50 feet and below, I've never seen anything more calm, docile, and beautiful. Like, wow. So, like, thank you so much for having the strength and the courage and to love something that is terrifying to people because you don't see it. You didn't see it either, but you're still willing to go back and to try to help other people. And that's like some strength. That's some inner strength that's like really admirable. And so I just want to tell you, I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. All right, any other questions?
I have a question. Was there a moment where there was like a tipping point between having suffered this horrible injury and just being someone who was, you were doing this athletic activity. You were not intending to have an encounter with nature, and it just kind of happened to you. Was there a tipping point between fear and kind of the admiration and protection that you feel now?
Yeah, I don't know if it was really a tipping point. I think just being a nature person at the beginning and all the way through this and just having it happen, I don't think I really gave a second thought to it. It was more like a natural progression for me. It was more, okay, well, yeah, that happened. And then I was just like, well, yeah, it happened, but it's not really the shark's fault.
Do you think that perspective helped you?
Oh, absolutely. I think it helped me a lot in just probably acceptance part and getting back in the water. But then even so, like I remember the couple races I did just before I got actually back in the water. I did some races leading up to it, and they were all in lakes. And the first lake swim I did was at Benelli, which is a race I've done for like 5 years in a row. And I remember thinking, I can't even breathe in this wetsuit. Like, I can't even swim. And I would like, I need to get this wetsuit off. I can't swim. Oh my God, I'm not going to make it. And stopping and thinking, there's sharks in the water. And then I'm like, hold on a second, you're in a lake. Like, get over it, man. There's no sharks in here. But it's that.
People have that feeling in a pool, and they've never been attacked.
Right, but it's that unconsciousness, you know. And then going through my recovery, I read a lot of books on trauma, and they say that you have, like, throughout your life, you have these little trauma events that happen to you, right? When you're a kid or when you're a teenager, and you don't really remember any of them, they're suppressed. But when you have a major traumatic event, like a life or death event, a lot of that stuff is brought up again. And then you have these weird moments where you're just like, okay, where the hell did that come from? And I find that happens every now and then. Like, it's not so much, like, I find, like, when I'm by myself, like, I was marathon training shortly after that, and I got lost. Like, I literally could not find my car. And because I had parked in the dark, I had a 20-mile run to do, and I was like at mile 16, and I'm like, I only have 4 miles to go, and I couldn't find my car. I literally was crying in the middle of the street because I felt like I was like abandoned and I couldn't find my way home. And it was kind of like I was back in the water thinking to myself, okay, I hope someone gets me out, because if I don't get out, I'm dead. But I'm on a street in the middle of like Orange County going, where's my car? But it was just one of those unconscious things that hits you, and all of a sudden you have this emotional moment, and you got to say to yourself, wait, you got to kind of reassess the situation and say, wait, I'm in the middle of the street, yeah, I can't find my car, but that's happened before. Let's just GPS or find it. And then my phone died, you know? Yeah, and then it just happens again. So just little moments like that, and it can come from nowhere. Right? So I think, and this is what we kind of talk about on the Bike Club page, this page for survivors, is sometimes you just have these random moments where you, out of nowhere, you feel like you're back right there in the water again. And you're feeling like so much distress or so much fear that you just have to reassess it and say, you know what, I'm okay. I can do this. Yeah, so. In the back.
Since you're advocating for sharks, I was wondering if you had a favorite shark fact or a favorite shark species, or maybe even a favorite thing about sharks in general.
Oh, so I do have a favorite shark. It's a whale shark. So I think the first shark I would dive with would be a whale shark. I do like leopard sharks. I've dove with leopard sharks already. So you can see leopard sharks on the bottom of the ocean, so that's really cool because they're small and they're not very big, and their mouths are on the bottom, so like I'm not even intimidated by those guys. And I think a whale shark, because they're filter feeders, I wouldn't really feel afraid in front of a whale shark or beside a whale shark, so I think they'd be really cool.
I would have guessed based on your outfit that you would have said a hammerhead.
A hammerhead. I do think hammerheads are pretty cool. My son likes hammerheads.
They're wild looking.
So they are wild looking because their eyes are way out there, and they do have a really small mouth. So, but hammerheads have been known to bite the odd human, but I don't think they really do that much damage. But a favorite shark fact. So I think their skin would be the really cool thing. Because their skin is you think it's smooth, but when you touch it, it's kind of like grainy, like sandpaper, because it's like the roof of a tile roof. It's like these little, and I can never get scientific names properly, like denticles, and they just like layer on top of each other, and it's kind of rough and funny feeling.
It's one way is sharp, so if you rub it like this, it'll cut you, but the other way
It's smooth, yeah. So I think that's cool. And I really like the Ambuli lorenzini.
What is that?
So the Ambuli lorenzini is like a shark has every sense that you have, but they have this special sensor that's on their snout, and it's these little pockets in their snout, and it detects electrical impulses. So there's a picture right there on the screen. So it's all these little pockets, and they detect your heart rate or splashes in the water or the distress of a fish on a line. So, and they can sense that instantly. So if it's dark, if they can't see, they can still detect your heart rate, and that's why they say, you know, be calm.
Yeah.
Because your heart rate has one of the highest electrical impulses on Earth. So if your heart rate's high, they're going to find you for sure.
Yeah.
And
Well, I
so-
know they make like little bracelets or anklets now.
Yeah,
that have
so-
electrical frequency that supposedly.
Yeah, so I have one of those.
Yeah.
I know the guy who invented those from Santa Barbara. He's a close friend of David's. They don't work against great whites as easily because great whites come at you at 20 to 30 miles per hour.
Yeah.
They work pretty good against bull sharks because they just kind of cruise. And they come up beside you and they kind of look at you with this kind of look. And then you're like, no, go away.
Yeah.
So a slower moving shark, they would do more with. But interesting enough, on Shark Week, they had that same episode with the Crikey, with the Steve Irwin's child. There was a guy on there who's talking about a new wetsuit they're trying to come out with that has a different material that's supposed to resist a bite force.
Oh, wow.
So one of the experiments they did was the bite force of a shark compared to an alligator. And the bite force of a 20-foot great white, because actually Chris Lowe just did an article in the Orange County Register, and my client gave it to me. 40,000 pounds per square inch. No, 4,000 pounds per square inch of
Wow.
a great white 20 foot. So that's pretty impressive.
And they were doing this test on a wetsuit?
They were doing this test like on a piece of cardboard or something, but this guy's trying to make this wetsuit that's supposed to encounter the bite force of a great white and not have it impact as deadly on a person who's wearing a wetsuit.
Wow.
So it protect them in a bit better rather than shredding the wetsuit
Yeah.
like they did in my case and every other case.
Wow.
So it's pretty interesting when you get to see the science.
Yeah.
And so if anybody's interested, Chris Lowe is having a event this Saturday from 10 till 3 at Cal State Long Beach. And he's going to be talking about all the work he's done over the years with the sharks in California.
Fantastic. And I
So-
think, as you mentioned before, anybody that's watching at home that wants to get involved or support the work
Yeah,
you're
so
doing.
www.sharkstewards.org. We do have a volunteer page. For the run this year, it's October 22nd in Newport Dunes, Newport Beach. So we are looking for volunteers for that, or people who just want to do the event and help raise awareness. That's October 22nd, and the website for that is www.runforsharks.org. So all that information is on the back table. And there's some shirts in there if you wanted to look at the shirts. And the book, Sharks for Kids. It's a pretty cool book. And then there's some freebies there. So divers might want the swim kit, which is some swimming shampoo and stuff. Or there's protein powder, and it has a bunch of stickers in there and stuff like that. So just on the round table at the back, there's some freebies for you guys. Oh, and we're going to raffle off this Dana Wharf tickets for 2 for whale watching. So we had come to an agreement that we would pick the birthday that is closest to today's date. So
Sounds like someone's got a
today's
birthday
date is
today.
7/28. So whose birthday is in July? When's your birthday?
July 24th.
July 24th. Anybody closer than July 24th? No?
That one might take it.
All right. Well, you got the whale watching tickets. Come and get them. Woo woo. Come on. You have to come and get them. You're welcome. Say hi to Donna for me.
Oh, of course.
And there's some stickers in there and stuff. So
Fantastic.
enjoy.
Thank you.
So the blue whales are in right now. The blue whales and the humpbacks. So good luck. And they have minke whales.
Christmas, man. Oh,
Yeah, they have minke whales there as well.
That'll
But
be a
look
great
in the
trip.
harbor.
All right. Well, Maria, thank you so much again for coming to share your story with us and all the goodies that you brought along
Yeah.
as well. I hope that people here and watching along at home will continue to get involved and to help you in your mission.
Thank
And
you.
I hope that everybody will continue tuning into the Adventures Club or coming by. We have programs every single Thursday night that we both live stream and we have going on in person at our clubhouse in LA. Next week, I think we have a solo motorcycle trip down Baja, Mexico. which should be pretty fantastic.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
So Maria, thank you again. Let's have a round of applause. and
Thank
we'll see
you.
all next week.
Awesome. Woo! And this, I have to tell you, this is a pretty amazing place. You guys got some cool stuff on the wall, and it's cool to see the history that's
Absolutely.
involved in this place and how it all originated.
Yeah. Well, and the best part is the stories.
Yeah,
that the members and
stories
our
are
guests bring.
amazing.
Yeah.
The stories of life. There
Absolutely.
you go.
So we'll
All
see
right.
you all next week.
See y'all next week.